Measuring progress is a really important part of everybody's fitness journey. And it doesn't matter what your goal is, whether your goal is to get really strong, build muscle, lose some weight, tone up, or just feel better and be healthier. Measuring our progress along the way helps us know if what we're doing is actually working. And it can be setting a goal, reaching it, and hitting the next one. Or it could be a bigger goal that's going to take some time to get to, and so we set smaller checkpoints that we want to reach along the way. The problem is measuring progress is not always so cut and dry, and it can be different for a lot of different people. So how do we document our progress? The first thing to think about is whether we're in the fitness space specifically to do like a sport or a competition, or whether we're here to be in the fitness space. There's a pretty clear difference here, because if you were playing a sport, then it's very easy to measure your progress, whether it's your participation, your performance in that sport or competition, or maybe there are some sort of predefined checkpoints that we want to look at when we're evaluating someone's readiness for sport. That could be something like a 40-yard sprint or a vertical jump. More specifically to the fitness space, it could be that you're a powerlifter and your measurements are going to be squat, bench, deadlift. Or maybe you're an Olympic lifter and it's the clean and jerk and the snatch. So if you're doing something very specific, measuring your progress is a little more cut and dry, because all we need to do is check back with those movements every so often. And there are some guidelines we can use for this, depending on what the goal is. Maybe you're testing every month. Maybe you're testing every 8 weeks. Maybe it's every 12 weeks. Maybe you're not really going to test again for 6 months, and you'll do a couple smaller tests to sort of check your progress in between. But if you have a specific sport or a specific activity you're looking to get better at, best way to check progress is to revisit that activity every so often and see how we're doing. Then we can evaluate the programs that we did beforehand and see if they helped. But if you're just in the fitness space, then measuring your progress can be a little bit more difficult, because our goals are not always so specific. So the first thing I'll say about this is, for a lot of people, maintenance is progress. This is something that we reiterate and hear all the time. When you're having those tougher seasons in your life and you're going to the gym and you're not really seeing a lot of progress, whether it's because an old injury or pain has flared up, or because you're not sleeping as well, your diet's been a little bit off, not every program that you run in the gym, not every workout is going to be spectacular, and there will be times when you won't make a lot of progress forward. And in those times, we say that maintenance is progress. In a time in the world where so many people every decade are losing muscle mass, they're losing flexibility, they're losing strength, and they're just losing capability, and their health is slowly deteriorating over time. If we can get to a place where we're maintaining, that's great progress all on its own. But if we're looking for something a little bit more specific, we have some recommendations for that. So first, we need to differentiate between our shorter term programs and our longer term goals. In a lot of cases, we're not going to see big jumps in progress, aside from maybe a very beginner or a novice exerciser. We're not going to see very huge jumps in progress over the course of a 3 or a 4 or a 6 week program. A lot of times what you're seeing is, let's say your goal is to be better at push-ups, and the first week your best set is 17 and the next week you do 18. The question is, did you get 1 rep better, or was the first week you didn't feel that good, the second week you felt a little bit better, or maybe the second week you just mentally had the fortitude to push a little further? It's really hard to know within a program whether we're just pushing harder and having good days, or whether we're actually making progress. So we go back to the sport example, where it might make sense to test less frequently and see if we're building along the way. So every 4 weeks, every 8 weeks, maybe every 12 weeks, we go back, we can revisit the thing that we're trying to get better at. Let's say it's push-ups, and we can know that we don't have to do push-ups for 12 weeks to see progress in push-ups. Sure, doing push-ups will help, but you know what else will help is building all the pressing muscles of your upper body. You know what also helps? Building a stronger core. You know what also helps? Losing weight. So there's lots of factors that could make you better at push-ups over the 12 weeks, and we can see whether the programs we ran and whether the adjustments that you've made helped or hurt when we test every so often. But we don't necessarily have to test every single week. Now, what about these longer term goals? What about bigger goals? Or maybe goals that are a little more ambiguous, like losing weight, toning up, body composition, just feeling better, being healthier. Some of these long-term goals, 12 weeks won't even be long enough. So how do we know that we're making progress over time? The problem here is that progress is not linear. And so even testing every 4 weeks for something like body composition might just be a little bit too much. Instead, what I would suggest is to look for small victories along the way. So let's use some specific examples. If our goal is to improve our body composition, in the course of 4 weeks, let's say we're using a body composition, a body fat measurement system, and then maybe we're also doing things like push-ups or chin-ups to try to give ourselves an idea of how our body composition, our relative strength is improving or not improving. The problem in the short term is that these things are not terribly accurate. Like I said, with the push-ups, it could be that you just had a better day and you were able to add a rep or two. And is that really statistically significant? On the other hand, in the short term with things like body composition analysis, we have things like margins of error. And so if your body comp improved by 1% over the course of 4 weeks, is that really significant? Did it actually work? Instead, we need to look at a longer term scale, 12 weeks or maybe 6 months, and then look back from there. How about other more ambiguous goals like feeling better? This is a hard one because feeling better is a very subjective measure. And even if you come in and you say, my general feeling is a 5 out of 10, and you come back 2 months later and you say, oh, well, it's a 3 out of 10, but there was something that happened the day before that just made you feel really bad about your physical health. These are the types of things that can sort of blur progress even when it's happening. Another example might be losing weight. This is a hard one because outside of at least a month, it might be hard to see weight loss beyond normal water fluctuations. So how do we measure weight loss? Well, we could, of course, get on the scale 3, 4, 7 times a week, take the averages, but even averages can change a lot between weeks, and they don't necessarily provide this linear graph that we want to see when it comes to losing weight. So how do we keep track of our weight loss? Again, we need to look at a longer time scale and try to look for small victories within those programs. The difficulty with measuring progress in fitness is that so many of our goals are ambiguous and can be affected a lot by the things that are happening right now in our life. So the best piece of advice I think we can give is to take a much longer approach and to look for the small victories in between your assessments. If you have one of those 20% days in the gym where you pop out 25 push-ups instead of 15, that's a great small victory. If you have a day where you're maybe working in the yard and you're able to do something you weren't able to do before, that's a really good victory. If you have a day where you put something on, a piece of clothing that you haven't worn in a while, and it fits better or it fits for the first time, that's a great small victory. And so you know that even though you're not necessarily testing every single week and trying to document every month's progress exactly, these small victories will help keep you motivated along the way. So stay optimistic, look for the small victories. Measuring progress in fitness can be very difficult, especially where the seasons of life often take us through good times and very bad times. And trying to measure consistently every single month can lead us to believe that we're not making progress when we really are. So stay optimistic, look for the small victories, and set a little bit of a longer time scale and just give yourself a little more breathing room and just be more forgiving when you do have bad days. Because when it comes to having bad days and off days or even bad programs, those are what we call the 80%. And without the 80%, you can't have the good days.